Welcome back. We're going to talk trans now with Paola Diana, the chair of the Women's Policy Centre. Lovely to see you this morning, Paola. The Gender Recognition Act, just remind us what it is and what it does.
Yes, the Gender Recognition Act 2004 provides individuals who think they are transitioning in some way, not even surgically, just by their will, to gain a piece of paper, a document called the Gender Recognition Certificate. And with this document, magically, they change sex. So eventually a man can become a woman just because of this document, and it can invade all women's spaces. Of course, this creates a legal loophole. Can ill-intended men, and pedophiles as well, should use to harass women and children. So there is a safety concern that is very important to address. The Gender Recognition Act was one of the most significant changes to the legal definition of sex in UK history. Still, it was done without women's democratic input and consent. Men's rights are not really impacted by the GRA because women generally do not pose a threat to men. On the contrary, women, particularly girls, could face sexual abuse and male violence on a daily basis. In this light, the Gender Recognition Act inherently discriminates against women and jeopardizes the safety of women, children, and vulnerable groups.
OK, so I get your point on the GRA, its impact on women-only spaces. I also get your point, as I think lots of people watching and listening to this will get, that actually the idea that a man can just get a certificate. I appreciate it needs to be showing that you have tried to transition for 2 years, be signed off by a doctor, but that you can certificate this idea that you can become a woman, and once it's written down on paper, that's it, is problematic. However, if you do repeal the Act, how do people legally change sex in this country?
They can't change sex legally because legal sex was an invention, was a political decision driven by a small group of Labour policymakers and radical trans-privilege activists. And mark my words, it's not rights that they're after. It's the privilege to crush our boundaries, to invade our spaces, to steal our sports awards, while humiliating us by parading their porn-driven sexual fetishes and forcing our children and us to participate in narcissistic games.
OK, but not everybody who changes sex is engaging in fetishism or indeed wants to play rugby in a women-only team, do they? What about those people who genuinely, Paola, what about those people who genuinely feel that they've been born in the wrong body, want to become female if they're male or male if they're female, don't pose any threat to anybody else? What should happen to those people? Because I completely take your point on the GRA and I take your point on predatory trans people, but that's not all trans people, is it?
No, it's not. But the category doesn't even really exist because the ones who are not ill-intended and they don't have sexual fetishes are for the majority, young people, usually autistic and gay, and we should help them because they're victims of this social contagion that, again, is driven by social media and porn online. The legal sex shouldn't exist. Sex has always been, for millennia, biological sex. We can't have laws that jeopardize 51% of the population and more because our children are the ones most in danger. People must understand that the GRA has far-reaching implications that extend beyond gender identity recognition. This is the only law that forces us to lie because it affirms a falsehood that people can change sex while no one ever can change sex.
So you're saying that people, if they want to, can physically change sex, they can go and have surgery, they can go from being a woman to a man, calling themselves a man's name, but you are just saying there should be no legal recognition of that sex change at all?
Absolutely. Do we have special laws that give privilege to anorexic women? No. Why should we have the same for the same type of illness? And remember that gender dysphoria is a form of mental illness, and that's why we are paying, we the taxpayer, are paying for breast augmentation. Do we pay for breast augmentation to women? No. We only pay for breast augmentation to men. How is that possible? Why is the NHS now spending...
Because the NHS wants to treat people with conditions like gender dysphoria, like it treats people with conditions like depression. like it treats
Exactly.
people. To be fair, you've cited anorexia. If you presented at a hospital with anorexia, you would hopefully get treatment on the NHS.
Exactly, Camilla, but that's my point. So why you need a special law to have special legal privilege and crush the rights of 51% of the population? You know, gay people as well, they're affected by this horrid gender ideology, because if you cancel biological sex and replace it with the idea of gender identity, then same-sex people cease to exist. It's a philosophical, ontological problem, and it goes far beyond what these people think they are. And plus, we know now that there are many detransitioners who are actually blaming doctors and teachers for telling them a lie. And the lie is you can change sex.
Paola Diana, we need to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for your thoughts this morning, clearly and candidly expressed. Well, thank you to all of my guests.